What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 68 of Nintendo Noise, Flipscreen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Max Wright.
Good afternoon, morning, evening.
Evening, whatever time of day it is, top of the day.
It's somewhere, yeah.
Well, we have a very sweet show for you today, gang. We are going to be talking all about the Super Mario Brothers movie's second full trailer, as well as the news that despite its many, many flaws, Pokémon Scarlet and Violet has become a record-setting game for Nintendo and the entire industry. So we're going to talk all about that and what it means for the future of Pokémon in just a minute here. But let's kick things off with the Mario discussion. Of course, the game or the game movie that I think everybody is talking about right now. We got our first proper, I think, full-length trailer, right? Not like the little teaser deal inside a Nintendo Direct. And I think it's a much better look at the actual plot of the movie and kind of like the broader beats of the story versus kind of what we saw in the first one. I'll start.
Finally introduced Bowser, right? Because like the first trailer, forgive me if I'm wrong, I don't think we saw Bowser or Princess Peach.
We didn't see Peach. We did see Bowser.
Trailer.
Yeah, Bowser sort of opened the first trailer when he's fighting the penguins.
Yeah, remember he attacks the penguins, and we got a little bit of Jack Black's voice. But yeah, in this one, we get our first look at Peach, we get our first look at Luigi, we get our first look at Donkey Kong. Quite a bit of new footage here. And I mean, I'll start the reactions off. I thought it was pretty good. You know, I think visually I was impressed with what the first trailer had to offer, and I think this is only doubling down on that. In that, I think they're really catching the vibe of the Mushroom Kingdom well. And I thought some of the jokes landed for me. Right? It's always like hearing jokes out of context in a trailer is always tough, but like it feels like a good vibe for what this is, which is a kids movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could agree with that. It's nice to see a lot more from the kind of different Mario franchises. Obviously, Rainbow Road and Mario Kart was in there. I think we saw some the kind of the fish and the platforming and how that's going to involve as well. Like, it's really cool to see it kind of come to life. It kind of makes me really want them to explore this style for a video game as well at some point. Like this kind of, I guess not realistic, but more HD looking. Like Mario's got actual hair on his mustache.
It feels more alive, right? Like I feel like a lot of, I think it's true of a lot of Nintendo games in general, right? But a lot of the Mario games, like even where there is dialogue, there's that kind of like, huh? And like they're just kind of like sitting there like looping an animation while someone talks. Like this is such a different. We've never seen Mario like have a conversation with someone before, right? Like I think there's a novelty to that is kind of interesting. And I thought it was cool. Like at the end, there was a bit where Miyamoto was talking about how this was the first time they've redesigned Donkey Kong since Donkey Kong Country 64.
Doesn't like much of a change to me. I mean, I'm currently playing Donkey Kong Returns, and it doesn't seem like a massive change. Like I
think the face looks a lot more like Miyamoto's original drawing of him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the face. It looked really off to me, but I think it's just because I'm used to seeing Donkey Kong how he's been in my head like forever. Yeah, it's just it seems strange. But then Mario doesn't look 100% like Mario still to me. Like his face is still more squishy than I consider Mario to be.
Yeah, I think Bowser looks pretty on point, but I think a lot of the other characters are probably more in line with the animation style. They've not redesigned them for the purposes of the game. It's for the animation, and that I think if, like you said, Steve, a second ago about if they made a game with this style, I feel like what would be interesting, more funny about that is that they'd make a game with this incredible style, and it somehow probably end up looking worse than Mario Odyssey did, purely because they're probably going to try and put all these fun HD graphics and do all this stuff to make it look more like the movie, but it's just going to have the same issue that all movie games have, which is lower quality. While it looks more HD and it's more colourful and stuff, you have to suffer in performance somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe on Nintendo's current hardware, you're right. But for the next generation, I'd like to see them take some cues from this and from the competitors as well, and maybe see the style shift. It feels like Mario 3D World, I think, kind of set the tone for what Mario in that 3D space looked like for this whole generation, both the Wii U and moving into the Nintendo Switch. And I think this movie is kind of setting a precedent as well as to what Mario could look like. Like, what does he look like with more realistic features, with hair, with like a more malleable face that can do more animation.
I thought that was pretty interesting with Peach specifically too, because like you rarely see Peach have more than like one of 2 or 3 expressions, right? So like getting to see her like speak to her court and everything, and like have this like, you know, more serious like look of determination and everything. It's like, oh yeah, that like it feels different. It's like we've never seen that before, but it's few and far between, you know.
And to
And
be
I
a,
loved
to be a
that
badass as
section
well.
where Well, I love that section where she like got fed up and she like collapses down on like the railing, like she's like exacerbated about the whole situation. I thought that was really cool, and I love the fact that the power ups are playing in here as well. Like you saw Peach with the fire. You also saw Tanuki Mario like flying up in the sky, which is really cool. I'd be interested to see some more of the kind of tie-ins that they do for fan service in that regard.
It's interesting too, because I think this was one of the things. I haven't seen the second movie yet, so and my understanding is it's a little bit more in this realm, but I remember thinking that when I saw the original Sonic the Hedgehog movie, where I was like, oh yeah, like this is like it's like a cute movie, but like it didn't feel like it was trading in like Sonic stuff enough, right? Like it feels very much like, oh, it's like a new take on Sonic versus like let's lean into the iconography and the stuff that you know so well. And you know, I think like if you're gonna adapt a franchise with, you know, as much history and iconography that is so immediately identifiable as Mario, right? Like
this is full of it, like absolutely full of it. Even there's a scene where she's walking with Toad, and Toad's got a frying pan in his hand, which is like the game Chef from Game & Watch, where you played as Toad and you were cooking food for Princess Peach.
I didn't think
and like
about that.
There's even kind of little Easter eggs like that that they're gonna shove throughout the movie.
Cuts.
It's really, really cool.
I was worried that from the first trailer they were going to do the whole Sonic thing where it's like fish out of water. He's not in his own universe. You know, they were going to have almost like an origin story of Mario finding the Mushroom Kingdom. But this seems to be a lot more like they are, like you say, leaning really heavily into it. Sort of, I was worried that it would be a sort of a Monster Hunter movie kind of thing where they go, well, you know, the audience isn't broad enough for us to be able to do a full Mario thing without also trying to get other people that aren't into video games. But like, it's Mario, so obviously they could do that, and I'm glad they are doing that. I mean, the trailer had like, woke up this morning and had a look at it to show a friend at work, and it had like over. I mean, I was just sort of scrolling through YouTube trying to find the official source, but I saw at least like 10 million views across sort of multiple videos.
It was the number 2 trending video on YouTube today.
Yeah, right. Crazy.
Pretty
cool. Which I guess lends something to Steve's point of maybe with the next Nintendo console, there's obviously going to be a sequel to this because there's no chance, you know, that many people watch a trailer in 12 hours and don't go and see it, and then it's not a huge success. You know, it's Mario. It's obviously going to happen.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, we've not got a Mario game that they are seemingly ready to sell us yet, right? Because April is kind of close to the Zelda launch, and it's like, are you going to sell us a game to go with this? Because surely you want to have a $60 game.
I don't think you need
to kind of to sell. I mean, I kind of feel like that's the move, right? That's what everyone else is doing. You look at The Last of Us, for example. They've got the HBO thing, and they're going to have the multiplayer game ready to go next year as well.
Theoretically,
have a game.
I think, yeah, theoretically, yeah. But I feel like that's the strategy for a lot of media franchises that kind of cross between video games and movies and like mixed media in general.
And like, I think you're right, but I think Mario kind of like sidesteps that. Like, you know, like you brought up The Last of Us Factions is the multiplayer thing that they're working on, and like, you know, The Last of Us is a beloved video game franchise, but it's not Mario, right? Like it's not. There's not that same level of saturation and just like familiarity with the IP, whereas like there are a lot of people who will probably go see this movie who maybe don't own a Switch, right? Or like maybe don't don't play video games anymore but used to, and then they have a kid that plays games, or they remember Mario fondly and they want to take their kid to the movie or whatever, right? Like, not to say that they don't want to take people from the, oh, you saw the movie, let's go play a Mario game. But I think they probably are banking on it being the inverse of like, well, every person in the world plays Mario games, right? So maybe you'll go see the movie, you know? I don't think you need to have like a tie-in ready to go to capitalize on like what this movie's going to be.
The number of Switches there are versus the number of Mario games there are versus how many of those Mario games have actually sold. You know, if this many people go and see the movie, you've then got so many of the games that maybe only have sold 20, I don't know, 30 million, like the port of the Wii U, 2D Mario 3D World, all those games that, while they've sold fantastically on their own right, when you have 3 games that people probably have maybe gone, oh, well, maybe not now. Once they've got that Mario fever, they're probably going to go back and pick up the back catalogue, right?
Yeah.
Not that Mario Kart needs it, but the others might.
And like maybe they do
I bet there's something, like I could see the next Mario Kart pack coming out with that. Maybe there's a Mario Kart course that's based on the movie course, and then we kind of see that come into the pack. I could see them doing like a Splatoon swap fest where it's around the Mario movie.
I bet you that'll happen. The other thing I think could happen is maybe this is where they finally reveal, you know, like the Nintendo Switch, like classics type line where they sell some of these older games at a discount, and it's like, here you can get Mario Odyssey for $40 now instead of $60, or you can get 3D World for $40. What?
I said that would be nice. What did they call those? They were the player's choice, right?
Player's choice, yeah. And they usually only introduce those near the end of a generation, right? Or like at least that's what they did last time around.
Yeah, I think we've had it by now. I think in terms of like the length, the life cycle of the systems, but you know they probably haven't been as successful as this one, except for the Wii. So
yeah, or who knows? They could always do another time. They could be like, oh, we're trotting back out 3D All Stars. You can get that again. There's a lot of cards. They could bring back Mario. What was it? 25, you know? Like they could.
Well, you could do a second 3D All Stars as well, because we got Mario Galaxy that you could chuck in there. Maybe you tie that with Mario Odyssey. You do a little bit of packing with that one, and you have like a second collection that's like the second set. Because there's 3D World as well with Bowser's Fury.
I think something like that feels more likely to me, because I think you're right that if they had something new, they would have talked about it by now. That's my guess anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really know anything other than Zelda that's coming out next year. But I mean, presumably, Advance Wars is next year. But who knows? That's seemingly on ice permanently at the moment.
Until all war ends.
Maybe we'll be playing it in a decade's time.
Fingers crossed. That'd be nice. No more wars
in our
10
utopia.
Years. That'd be good. But yeah, I gotta say, I'm. The more I see of this movie, the more excited I am for it. Because, like, I'm not, like, through the roof hyped for it, right? But, like, because it's a kid's movie. It's a kid's movie. I know that I am not the intended audience. But I get the impression that it will be good enough to be enjoyable in the way that Sonic was. Or that, like, you know, you'll be able to go into it and have fun, even if there's things about it that aren't for you as, like, for any of the people on this panel, right, who are, like, 30-year-old men. We're not the intended audience, but I get the impression that it's gonna scratch some of those kinds of nostalgic itches in the way that like Detective Pikachu did for me, right? It's like, was that a 10 out of 10 movie? No, but did I enjoy it like it was like closer to that than it should have been?
I thought that was a phenomenal movie.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Good time with Detective Pikachu, and I'm not even a massive Pikachu fan. Like I skipped the Pokemon episode because like I'm not a huge Pokemon fan, so it's like. I still had a great time with that movie. I think I'm gonna have a really good time with the Mario Brothers movie. I'm looking forward to it. The more I hear the voices, they're kind of growing on me, but I still don't like them. They still don't match the face for me because Charles Martinet has always been Mario and Luigi, and it feels weird to see someone else's voice coming out of those faces. But maybe I'll learn.
Charlie has a great fit for Luigi because he has that sort of like more real, like how Luigi is more sort of high pitched,
little meek, you know.
Yeah. I think Charlie Day plays that very, very well.
I'll tell you what, it's really funny. I saw a TikTok the other day where someone was like, everybody's complaining that Chris Pratt's Mario and it's not Charles Martinet. Let me remind you, folks. And this, I'm quoting this TikTok. Charles Martinet, not the original voice of Mario. Pro wrestler Captain Lou Albano was the original voice of Mario. So. I'm
fine with that. Like they've had like 600 Peaches, but guess what? They settle on one that's the kind of modern day one.
We just gotta accept that this is gonna be different, right? You gotta let it be what it is, you know?
Yeah, but do you want this to now to like make its way into the video games?
No,
Do you want like a full voiced
no,
Mario?
that would be bad. I mean, I don't know.
If the movie is a success, it would do gangbusters.
If they want to do a fully voiced Mario game, I'm not inherently against that, but I don't want it to be not like do it with Charles, you know?
Yeah, not Chris Pratt.
Not Chris Pratt. So I'm sure we will have another Mario trailer sooner than later, April. So it's not too far off now, but a lot of time for them to market it to us again. So I'm sure this will not be the last time we discuss this film before it comes out. But we've got a lot more to talk about today. So let me remind you that this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of November. They are, of course, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Sobi, Mary Berry, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all are the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Speaking of which, we have the first episode of our brand new podcast, the Flip Screen Games Game Club, the Flip Screen Game Club. I don't know what we're calling it, but it's a book club for video games. And what we're going to do is every month we're going to be playing another chunk of Persona 5 Royal, the greatest JRPG of our time. The first episode that just dropped on Wednesday, by the time you're listening to this, so that's yesterday, is all about up to the first palace, defeating Kamoshida. It was a really great time. It's been really fun to go back to that game, and of course, it is available on the Nintendo Switch now. So if you've already picked up the game and you've been playing along with us, make sure you go check out episode 1. If you haven't picked up the game and you'd like to play along with us, get caught up and get to the end of the second palace for episode 2. You got plenty of time. So I hope you'll check it out. I hope you'll come join us. The goal is to make that a regular thing where after Persona, we pick another game and we just play it month to month and kind of keep it going. But it's going to be based on how well it performs. So if you like the idea, even if you're not a Persona fan, make sure you go give it a watch, give it a like, give it a share, whatever you do. We appreciate you tuning in. Let's jump into our talking point this week. So as I teased at the top, Pokémon Scarlet and Violet obviously making a lot of headlines lately for being just rife with technical problems, right? We all know the game doesn't run very well, plenty of issues with pop-in and all that kind of good stuff. But even though this game, right, is having series low critical reception and depending on, who you ask, audience reception, they have broken damn near every sales record that they can. So, let's give you some context here. I'm pulling from a Forbes article that we'll link to down below. So, Nintendo announced that the games have sold 10 million copies in their first 3 days on sale, which is double what God of War Ragnarok made in its first 3 days, which was a record for Sony. So that's a good establishing.
Yeah, we spoke about that on the Flip Screen Games podcast this week, and it was like their lunch got well and truly eaten. It was like, oh, we did this in a week. It's like, yeah, okay, well, how about 3 days? And we did twice as many.
Right. But right, like that aside, that gives you a good litmus test for how popular this is. But when you start to get into the records that it's beaten, it's a little bit crazy. So it's broken every record that Nintendo has for fast-selling games, but also across the industry. So as of now, right, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are the fastest-selling Pokemon game ever, the fastest-selling Switch game ever, the fastest-selling Nintendo game ever, and the fastest-selling console-exclusive game ever across Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. Wild.
You could just say the last one and it would cover all of the first 3, but it does.
That's true.
Like how they get bigger as they go. It's pretty. We said this when we talked about this on Flip Screen Games that like I don't understand how every single time that the more people complain about Pokemon and have issues about Pokemon, the more it seems to sell. And I don't understand how it happens every time. Is it a franchise?
I
that's
think
just
this
growing
time
and growing?
around, though, like it's got to be because of off the back of Arceus and how successful that was, and how
the marketing,
great that game was.
They spent a lot on marketing this game, and they talked a lot
about
how
they
it's the
marketed it as
first
the
open
first
world
open
Pokemon.
world, yeah.
Like I think that struck a chord with people. That's something that people have wanted for a long time, and I think there are a lot of people who buy video games based on the franchise and the marketing and the hype around it, and don't necessarily look at reviews, don't necessarily, listen to podcasts or anything like that, and just went and grabbed it day one, and then like they got what they got, and like
or pre-ordered. Like I got to think that pre-orders before the reviews are even out attributed to a lot of these sales within the first three days. And everyone that's in the Flip Screen Game Sandwich Club, they must have been like very excited to pick this game up with all of the sandwich mini games in there.
It's crazy too, because I mean, like when you look at like the conversation around it, right? Like critical reception, like I said, is like it's a series low in a lot of cases, but like there are a lot of fans that are just like, hey, it's busted and broken, but I don't care and it's fun, right? Like last week when we talked all about it and about why I didn't pick it up, right? Like Chewy and Sierra, for every negative thing that they had to say about it, are really enjoying it. The vast majority of the people I've talked to about it, right? Like I was home for the holidays this past weekend for Thanksgiving, and like I ran into a bunch of old friends, and every one of them's like, did you get the new Pokemon? I'm loving it. Did you get the new Pokemon? I'm loving it. And like that's, it's like I don't know, Max. I don't know how, but it just keeps going and growing, and it's like it's crazy.
This feels like a real kind of blip though. I do not remember a game that they put out that was this broken, that still sold this much, because like Arceus, for all intents and purposes and all the flaws that I feel that game had, it was a complete game. You could play that and there was no technical flaws, there was no real issues, there was no game-breaking glitches.
Not like what we see in this game anyway, right?
Like
I'm sure there are lots of videos of it glitching and all that stuff, but not on the level of Scarlet and Violet, It was a much more stable piece of software at the very least.
Yeah, like I had no problems with it. The issues I had with it were from a design standpoint and from like a wish list that I've got. Like I still want them to kind of take that next leap, that next step into environment design, into character design,
voice acting,
like all of that stuff. I just want them to take that next leap to bring them up to standard with the other JRPGs of this generation and even the last generation. I'm playing Persona 5 at the moment for the Game Club. It's like that to me is like the gold standard of where we should be at, and that's a game from the PS3 generation. That's what we should be hitting for all JRPGs at this point.
I think when I watched Digital Foundry's review, it was pretty damning that it's not just technical issues. It's that all of the things that maybe are causing some of these technical issues are cutbacks, right? Let's make things phase out further than they have to, or load out. Let's cut the frame rate of things that are at distance to sort of save space or whatever. But all of the things they've done there aren't making room for things like impressive visuals, like high quality textures, or even that interesting like geometry design and stuff like that. It's not like they've gone, oh well, this game's too intense to run. It's like they've not been able to get it going. But I wonder if that's just not something that the general Pokemon audience specifically cares about. Maybe they don't care that the games are ugly. And obviously not, I'm talking about the people on Twitter, people like us who sit here in our mics chatting stuff about a game we haven't even played. But they are, with obviously the minority, and all the people that are screaming about refunds, also probably the minority. And I just think people that are maybe getting the game and playing the game and going, yeah, there's technical issues, but they've been playing games for 30 years like we have. Maybe not us because we're not 30 yet, but still. And they're having they're playing these games, not caring about the technical issues and just enjoying them for what they are. I just can't.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. Like these are very gameplay centric games. I don't think you were really going into this expecting luscious environments.
No, that's not the point.
Rich high definition graphics. But you're going into it, I think, expecting a game that's playable, that's complete, that isn't full of bugs and glitches and things. And I expect that from a Nintendo product. And maybe that's on me for still expecting them to uphold that standard that they set in the 90s when they kind of saved the video game industry with their seal of quality.
But that's the thing, right? I think it is fair to expect that. Like, what other Switch game came out in this state? Like, there are certainly Switch games that have come out with problems, right? We talked recently about how, Bayonetta and like Xenoblade 3 are games that feel like a little bit stifled by the hardware, and that they're
they're ambitious, but they're not broken. Like those are games that give it a little bit more horsepower, and I feel like those games will excel. I feel like on the next generation console, I feel like those games are really going to shine. And And maybe that's what they're targeting at the moment. Maybe they do know that something new is in the pipeline, and those games are just like, well, we're at the end of the life cycle of this one, so let's just make this a
But like this
showpiece
game
kind of
clearly
thing.
isn't that, right? Like I think to
No.
Max's point, like this game is not overly ambitious. It's poorly optimized. And it's clear,
Yeah.
at least from my estimation, right, is that like it was pushed out, right? Like they set a date, they kept that date, and there's no justification for that, right? Like whether you like the game or not, whether you think that the critiques around its performance are overblown, whatever, right? Like there's no excuse for a video game in the most financially lucrative video game franchise of all time, right, across the board, to come out in this state when there was another entry in the game only 11 months earlier. Not even 10
we didn't
months
even
earlier.
need that. It was like 10 months ago. So we just did not need another Pokemon game yet. This
There
could
was
have had another
2
six
months before
months.
that as well.
It
Yeah.
would have been fine.
Yeah, that's the thing. This game came out a year after the Gen 4 remakes, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
this is 3 Pokemon games in 12 months. And like
Yeah.
that game also had a ton of technical issues at launch, and it's just like you can't explain that any other way than greed. And that it was just they were just not willing to give another 6 months of development time towards the game.
I've been theorizing recently. When was the last time that a Nintendo game, other than Advance Wars, which was not just delayed but completely put on hold, and not Splatoon, which was basically just swapped with Xenoblade? When was the
Animal
last
Crossing.
time a game was fully delayed? Animal Crossing, is that it?
I think so, yeah.
I wonder
That's
if
the last one that we
Nintendo-
know about, right? That was
Yeah.
announced, had a date, and then got moved. I think it was Animal Crossing, if I'm not mistaken. But that
definitely
was
the
moved
last
twice.
one that I can think of, would be Animal Crossing, because that got pushed like a whole year, right?
I mean, that worked out amazingly for it. But I wonder if Nintendo is trying to stick to dates they give. No more, they're maybe as a publisher, they're saying, look, everyone's delaying their games. We can't do that. We have an opportunity to capitalize on people delaying their games into next year or indefinitely.
And like, there could be truth to that, but I find that so hard to believe when we've seen them like move chips around 3 other times this year, right? Like you just gave examples of 3 major releases that had dates in mind that all got shuffled around just because that was what made sense for them financially, right? So like,
well, and last year, right? Like Arceus, we're pretty convinced got moved to like a February release. That was a
January
weird time slot for them.
There's no way they
Yeah,
planned
it
to
was
put
a
that out in
weird time
January,
slot.
right?
They wanted this to hit for the holiday season to sell consoles and to get people to buy
And to sell 10 million
into
copies in
that
3
platform.
days.
Yeah. That's what that I think is what it was about, and it sucks. And it's whether that came from the Pokemon company, from Game Freak, from Nintendo, but someone should have looked at this game and said, no, it's not ready. Like someone needs to have had like the hard line and just be like, no.
And I think that's the tragic thing here, right? Is like, what does this even mean for the future of Pokemon? Because the games came out and they were an embarrassment and they didn't review that well, but it's a huge success by every metric that matters to people that make money, right? For the bean counters, they're probably doing backflips. It's like, cool, we crunched and pushed this game out on an accelerated timeline and it broke sales records. That's a win.
I know, but it starts to get a bad reputation. It's kind of what happened with Sonic, right? Every single Sonic game would come out, it would be a tragic disaster, and yet they'd still sell ridiculous amounts of copies, but they start to get a bad reputation of like, oh yeah, but it's a 3D Sonic game, it's not going to be any good. Like,
but who cares?
You don't want that. You don't want that with your like hot franchise. You want it to be seen as like a quality product.
And like, I agree with you, but like, do they? Because it's like, again, you look at Sonic, like they kept making them, they kept cashing the checks, and the people
are still excited for them.
Yeah, and the people that love Sonic show up for it every time. Like, what if that's just what Pokemon is going to be now? Where it's like, okay, like, it doesn't need to be good. It doesn't need to be a genre.
Really sad. That's really sad.
It's a
shame. Really, really sad. I just do not want that to be the case.
Yeah, I'm always amazed that Sonic 2005 was like the big, like, Sonic from this point on has always been trying to be as good as it was before Sonic 2005. That was 17 years ago. And yet there are still people who, early teenagers, people who are around that age who didn't get to play that game when it came out, who are still diehard, like solid Sonic fans, who got into the series in that period after
While
that
it was
time.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's going to same's going to happen for Pokemon. They're going to be playing these games now. This might be their first Pokemon game. There's obviously going to be a huge amount of people who have played this as their first Pokemon game, seeing as it's broken all the records. That from that, this is going to be Pokemon to them, and they're going to want to keep playing it no matter what the quality is. The same way people will defend Gen 1 for all of its many flaws, just because it was the first outing on a console on the Game Boy and it had sort of like cut development time and stuff. People will defend that game as if it's a perfect game when you can list out all the things that are wrong with it and all the things that maybe are a bit lazy and whatever. But they don't care about that. They don't see that. That to them is the best Pokemon game, the one that they love, and this will be that for so many people. I wonder if, just to make a completely different point, if 10 million means we don't need to patch, or 10 million means, we need to patch.
I was really concerned about that, but I kind of feel that them issuing refunds, which you touched on, goes to show that they know the state of this game. Like they do not issue refunds for anything.
Yeah,
and it's even a clause that you have to like check the box when you buy in the EU that it's like, we're not going to issue you a refund. You check this box and you're not going to get any money back. And I kind of feel that is this them kind of admitting that they know something's wrong with this game and they're going to accept the fact that, yes, it's a buggy mess and we're going to give you a refund, and they are working on patches behind the scenes? Or are they going to take that 10 million and they're just going to cash it in and we're never going to see really any major updates?
It's tough because I don't know, right? Because like they patched the Gen 4 remakes, right? Like I remember that being a story, but it's like, I don't know, right? Like, it's like, do you even need to? Like, it broke all these sales records. It did what it did, whatever. Like, there's going to be another one out next year, right? Or like within the next 18 months at least. So like, how much does it matter, right? Like, I don't know. Like, did this actually do anything, right? Because like so many of the people that bought it, even acknowledging the things that are wrong with it, like it anyway. So it's like, to those people, was this just another Pokemon game, or is they like, oh, this is the worst one, they really got to get it together? I don't know how many people feel that way.
Everyone I've spoken to though has been, this is a really great Pokemon game, but it does have a lot of bugs. And it's always that but. Whereas Arceus, it was just like, this is the best Pokemon ever. This is my favorite Pokemon. I love being able to see all the Pokemon in the wild. I love being able to run around. I love the fact that it's like open world or like open region. I've not heard that. There's always a caveat with this game.
Right.
And it sucks that there's a caveat with this game.
But I guess that's the question, right? Is like, do they see that as a problem? Do they see that as something they need to address and patch and whatever? Or is it, hey, we missed the mark a little bit this time, but we got some good feedback. Let's work on the next one, right? Like, because we know that they're already mid-development on the next game. That's what they do, right? Like, Arceus was developed in a vacuum. This game was developed in a vacuum. That's why there's none of the features and the things that people liked in Arceus are not in this game, right? Because they were made at the same time. So whatever the successor to this game is probably already actively in development, whether that's the next generation, the next Legends game, the next spin-off, whatever. There's another Pokemon probably no more than, I would say, 18 months away. Right, it's probably the max.
We've probably got one next year, probably another remake, probably by, I think it was Timmy that did it. I think it's probably we're going to see it from
white.
Yeah, they'll do black and white.
And then we'll go back to a Game Freak game the following year.
Yeah, I think you're probably right that we're definitely going to see. Yeah, we're not going to see like another big. I don't think we'll see another Legends next year. I think maybe we're going to give that a little bit of extra time. I mean, I know the framework's there now. They could just sort of take a different region, apply the same ideas to it. But we also said the exact same about Let's Go, and they didn't do that.
They never ever did it again.
Well.
And it's like, that's baffling to me. But whatever. Yeah. Like, okay.
Pete, did you buy this game?
Let's Go, I think, is the most, to me, it's the prettiest Pokemon game on the Switch. And I think it's because it's so simplistic in style.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably true. And they just perfectly recreated Kanto.
I didn't buy it, Max.
So here's my question to you and to Steve and to myself, right? This is, Pete specifically, I know I've always known you to be a competitive Pokemon player. You've always, even when Sword and Shield was out, you were excited about the competitive side of it and really getting into that. And you were trying to play with AJ, I remember, and that was big for you. You didn't buy this game, right? Me, I've always bought Pokemon. I've always been a big fan of Pokemon. Sword and Shield, I bought it at the time, played through it, did 100 hours of it, and then after the fact was like, I didn't really enjoy that, actually, after I put 100 hours into it, right? I got the Diamond and Pearl remake, and I loved that because I was like, this is exactly how I remember it, right? I played Arceus, hated it. This one had absolutely no interest in it. You didn't buy it. Steve didn't buy it. Are we over Pokemon? Are the three of us who are nearly 30?
I was way
Are
over it
we
ages
over
ago.
Steve's
Max.
never
Like,
liked
I was never
Pokemon,
really
so
in,
it's
I was never really
just
into
kick him
it.
out of this, Max. We'll
Steve,
talk just
pretend
you and
this
me.
is yeah. This is a classic with us.
Do you know the thing that happens with me, Max, is I get sucked into the hype every single time, and I seem to buy every other one. Like I bought Let's Go, I didn't buy Sword and Shield. I bought Arceus, I didn't buy this one. And like I don't know if I will get sucked into the hype again. I'm really glad that this game was a mess, because I feel like I probably would have, because everyone keeps telling me how it is the best Pokemon made and how it does have all these really cool mechanics. But yeah, I'm way over Pokemon.
This is the first Pokemon that I've actively engaged with the leaks, in that I was, checking out when the Pokemon were being revealed. I was actively waiting for there to be actually just pause briefly. If I mention emulation, is that bad?
No, just go ahead.
Okay, cool. Fine. I even was waiting for the XCI to come out so I could try the game out on an emulator, just to sort of see if a lot of the things that were being talked about were correct. And then as soon as that I did that and I tried that, none of it was enough for me to go, yeah, I want to play this game. And I wonder if that's going to be it for me for Pokemon forever, right? Even the hype wasn't able to get me in any way interested. I was against this buying this game since it was first revealed for some reason.
Yeah, so I don't think so. I don't think I'm out on Pokemon. I think it would be really hard for me to get to a point where I'm totally out on it, because like again, like there's so many things about it I like, right? Like I love competitive, and I have a lot of love for just what the series is. I like games that are about exploration and discovery. I like team management. I like, creature collecting. Like all those are things that, obviously started with Pokemon, but I've liked games outside of that already, right? Like I'm a fan of so much of what it does. But when I look at this game and why I feel like it was a miss for me, right? It's a perfect storm, because I loved Arceus. I think Arceus is one of my games of the year. I think it's in my top 3 favorite Pokemon games. I really, really loved Arceus. And I thought Arceus felt like a breath of fresh air. It felt like a move in the right direction, because it's like, oh, like this is actually fundamentally different. It's actually taking a risk. It's actually trying new things. And that I found to be so rewarding, right? So then take that context, right? I'm coming off that game like, oh my God, this is one of the best Pokemon games ever. All I want is DLC. I really hope they announce DLC for this fall. I want a battle tower. I want a new map region. Like that was what I was hoping for. So then instead of that, we get an announcement that the next generation is coming out less than a year later, right? And then it's awful when it drops, right? Even if it's a good game, that's not what we're talking. It runs poorly, right? It's a poorly optimized, poorly realized game, we'll say. I think part of what always makes it easy for me to come into a fresh generation and like get around the things that I don't like and appreciate the things that I do like is that I've had some space, right? It's like, well, I haven't played a Pokemon game in a year or two, and I am kind of feeling the draw to want to get back into it. And then, okay, here's the starters, here's some leaks, here's some new Pokemon. And like the machine starts rolling for me, and I'm like, all right, I'm excited. Even if it's not perfect, it'll be an experience worth having, right? Yeah. Whereas this, weeks out, right? Weeks prior to this game getting reviewed, I remember I tweeted and I was like, I am not excited about this game. I really wish they would just delay it. I don't need another Pokemon game this year. And, I'm not excited for it the way that I normally am. Then the leaks start, and that started getting me excited because I'm like, oh, I really like some of these new Pokemon. Like, I really like, some of the systems that they've talked about, the whole 3 narratives thing, the whole being able to play in any order thing. Like, they were saying things that were what I wanted to hear at the time, right? And then when it finally drops, it's like, oh, it's just caveats all the way down, right? Even if it is the first open world Pokemon. Well, it doesn't run very well. Well, you can't actually take things in any order because there's no level scaling. So like you're going to kind of get forced to do things in a certain way unless you just grind and then steamroll a bunch of stuff.
You have to do all 3 paths to actually finish the game, as opposed to play in whatever way you want to do.
Right.
You know, what do you want to engage with? Oh, you have to engage with all of it, actually.
And then on top of that, right, like talking with Chewie and Sierra last week, like the battle system, like they said, like everything's too easy, right? And like that was something I liked about Arceus, was that it felt a little bit harder and a little bit more challenging. And it's like, this is a step back again, right? And it's like, it just, for all of the things that, like, if you just wrote this out on paper, right? And we're like, for every one thing that's like a wish list item I've had for years that I've been like, Pokemon just needs to do this. This is the direction Pokemon needs to go. There's 2 or 3 things that go next to it where it's like, yeah, but like they kind of half baked it, or it's underdone, or they this feature's missing now. Oh, there's this new feature, but this thing that we used to have is gone. And it's just like, I think the reason I can safely say I'm not forever out on Pokemon is because I don't think there is a very short list of franchises that I want to love as much as Pokemon, right? There are a few franchises that, you know, I hold in such high esteem, and it's like, this is just my shit, right? And like when it's done right, it's better than almost anything else, right? And you can look at Pokemon, and it's a franchise I think on that list has more potential than almost any other IP. It's one of the most broadly applicable IPs ever developed. It's so good at having so much to do and having an opportunity for self-expression through like what Pokemon you use and how you play and what content you decide to engage with and all that stuff, right? Like, and we've seen them do it well so many times, but like we're at a point where corporate greed or laziness or whatever you want to attribute it to, right? Has just gotten to the point where it's like, it's like a fire that's getting suffocated before it starts, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, it just needs more oxygen. It just needs more time to bake for it to be more than it is. And
we've got to get away from the annualized releases. I really think that's the move. It can't be a new Pokemon game every year.
I agree with you. Or though, if they're committed to that, you need to build a machine around it, because that was something.
You've got more than one studio.
That's 3 teams. Yeah.
And Max, I feel like it might have been. I was talking about somebody. I feel like it might have been you. I was talking about somebody, and they brought up Call of Duty. They're like, "Well, Call of Duty can be annualized every year. Like, why does that work?" And it's like, "Well, they built a machine, right? There are 3 studios.
It's not even annualized every year. Like they shifted that. They've said it's
but
not
even
so, be annualized.
Look at historically. They're at the last several years. It's been annualized. How did they achieve that? They have 3 incredibly talented AAA studios stacked with developers with years of talent under their belt, and then each of those studios has a support studio. So like you have 6 huge AAA studios making these games so that you can get them out on an annual or even semi-annual basis.
Yeah,
it's a 3-year cycle for every single one of those games, and it's quite clear that Game Freak is not on that. I think they're probably on a 2-year cycle at this point.
Yeah, and even that, right? Like, you can't even do that with Pokemon if you want to do like what everybody expects, right? Where the new generation is you get a new dex of Pokemon, a new region, and a bunch of new features. That needs longer than 3 years to be really good. You know, like it's just you don't have enough time anymore. And like, you know, everybody was mad about, you know, the whole the Dexit thing in Sword and Shield, and it's like, dude, like something has to give. Right? Like, you either need to cut content, you need to stop making new Pokemon and focus on gameplay systems, or you need to extend the development time. You know, and it's like, it's a shame because back in the day, right? Like, you got 2 Pokemon generations on a platform usually. So it's like you'd get like the 2 original versions, the 3rd version, 2 original versions, the 3rd version. And that was all the Pokemon you got. We've gotten that many Pokemon. Like, we've gotten what used to be a whole generation in
You always had remakes.
That's true.
Don't forget.
Well, from gens 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
And 6. But yeah, you're right. But like...
And 7 had the...
Oras.
Yeah, and then... Well, it depends where you put... It depends where you want to put Let's Go as well. That probably counts as a remake of some kind.
But that's the thing, right? It's like on the Switch, we've had Let's Go. We had 2 Let's Go games. We had Sword and Shield. We had DLC for Sword and Shield. We had the Diamond and Pearl remakes. We've had Arceus, and now we've had these games. That's so much in such a short amount of time. And it's like, I would so much rather have half as many games that are higher quality and then just put out DLC that costs as much as a full game. Like, if it's all about financials, like, figure out a way to charge us the same amount for less higher quality content. I'd take that trade anytime.
3DS Pokemon out after the Switch was released as well?
No, I think Sun and Moon came out the year before the Switch
came
out.
Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon came out.
Oh no, yeah, great shit. Yeah, good point.
2017.
Did they?
You are right.
You know, you might be
They
right.
did.
You might be right.
So they put those out as well within the life
3DS.
cycle of the Nintendo Switch.
I got my 3DS out in 2016, and I played Sun and Moon. That was my sort of first Pokemon game since
November
Pearl.
November 17th, 2017. Yeah.
Which
so
here's a good point.
Those, and then all of the Nintendo Switch games since then.
This is a good point for me to jump in with. So, for me, for Pokemon, right, Sun and Moon for me was the last. For me personally, before Pete gets upset about Legends Arceus, for me the last great Pokemon game was Sun and Moon, right? For the ones that I've played, right? I didn't play.
That's an interesting take.
I didn't play Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I then played I've played every one of the Switch games bar Scarlet and Violet. For me, Sun and Moon, it took the the Pokemon formula that I knew and loved, and it made it 3D, not in the same way that it is 3D on the Switch, but it put it in 3D. It gave it what I thought great visuals for the system. You know, the game looks great. The Pokemon looked great. Then, Let's Go came out, fine. Sword and Shield, I think for me, didn't have. It was like a weaker version of a 3D version of Pokemon, right? And everyone was saying, it's their first time on a 3D console, first time on a home console, it's their first time in the open world. They're obviously building towards. I even said the same. They're obviously building towards something. Let's see next generation. This generation comes out. Everyone's saying the same thing. Oh, it's their first time doing an open world Pokemon game fully. It's their first time this, that, and the other. They've already been a Pokemon game this year. Like a lot, maybe the next one will be good. And I want to believe that the next one's going to be good. But I just don't know if that's possible for me. But also, if I then go back and play the older games now, so I started playing Black and White or Black on my Steam Deck. I've been ruined by the features of the new games that I like. I've been ruined by XP share that I think is a great feature that helps. Takes a lot of the swapping and grinding and just like building a team. It makes that a lot easier. Just a lot of the quality of life stuff that's in the being able to see what a move does before you use it, being able to see. If a move you're using, once you've used it, is going to be super effective. Things like that. That makes the older games harder to play now. So I'm like, okay, I really want them to be able to make new games that are like the old games, but also the new games. And I just think it's impossible. That's for me personally. Obviously, I'm not saying that Pokemon as a whole is buggered in that way. Steve, you're muted.
You don't think you can ever come back to it? You don't think Game Freak's got it in them?
I think that I want too much, and I think that's a me problem. But I also think that's a problem with Pokemon as a whole.
I don't know. I don't think it's a you problem. I think it's a completely reasonable expectation set by every other video game franchise. And like,
do you both think that these games could be kind of for you two? Given, and I know I've asked you this question before, Pete, and I think it was Trendy Brandy that asked this question before. Do you think it can be given the Stardew Valley treatment? Do you think something like a Coromon or a Temtem or an Ooblets can do it for you?
I don't think it can. I never say never, right? But like, I think Pokemon is like, it has such a head start that like for you to really make a meaningful copy, you have to just straight up copy it. And if you're doing that, you can't Stardew Valleyify it. Like
what if it was say Atlas and they took all of their personas that they had in Persona 5 and they take the kind of style of gameplay of Pokemon where it's like collection, open world, and they go down that route?
I don't know. Dragon Quest tried it, and it just didn't really happen. Dragon Quest tried Dragon Quest Monsters, and it didn't really happen. For me, I think Pokemon is what's strong about Pokemon is I get really excited for the Pokemon designs of what they're going to evolve into, and I think that there's so many interesting concepts, and there is such a way that world feels like those Pokemon live in that world, and it's sort of lived in, and a mix of old and new is really great. Temtem, for me, all the creatures are. The thing I like about Pokemon is that you look from Pokemon Gen 1 all the way to Pokemon Gen 9, and you see them all mixing together, and there's a sort of they're not all the same. Whereas things like Temtem, when I played Temtem, I was like, all of these creatures look like one person has put these together. You know, there's not history of Sugimori or James Turner who have put their own spin on things, and the franchise has evolved. It's like one person. They've gone, right, we need vaguely alien things, but it can't look like Pokemon because otherwise we'll get sued because they're making a Pokemon game.
There's a lot of like, I think, mechanical stuff too, where it's like, I like the mechanics of Pokemon and the battle system of Pokemon, and like the other the imitators don't quite nail it, you know, and like all the things you can say about how Pokemon needs to evolve, the battle system is the only thing that I think has meaningfully evolved every generation and gets more interesting as time goes on.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that was a step backwards, though, for these games, right? Like, Arceus, people seem to love the new take on the battle system, and some of that stuff seems to be gone.
I don't think it's a one-to-one. The changes to the battle system in that game were specific to Arceus, and they're not things that would work in every Pokemon game.
Fair enough.
Yeah, because it was about having Pokemon out with you and throwing them out to do things and stuff.
And like they changed the way that like priority worked. They changed the way that like some of the stat splits worked and everything. That was a real attempt from them to try something different, and I liked it. But I don't necessarily wouldn't necessarily want to see those same changes in the main game, per se.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a thing that like. I'm probably going to get this game at some point. I'm probably going to put hands on it at some point and try to like work out my feelings about it overall so that I can continue to talk about the franchise. But right now I'm just like, I'm playing so many, like I'm knee deep in God of War, which is probably my game of the year, and Marvel Midnight Suns is out in 2 days. And those are both games that...
And that game's got a 10 out of 10, right? Marvel Midnight Suns seems to be like the absolute...
Really?
Cherry on top
it's
of
getting a lot of really good buzz.
Oh damn! Not something else I need to play.
And I love Firaxis, so like I'm excited for that game, and I'm just like I'm not about to put down games that are new and fresh and really worth my attention to play what amounts to an underbaked Pokemon game when I've played so many Pokemon games and quite enough underbaked Pokemon games as well. So. For now, I'm holding strong. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the problem is these games never go on sale, right? So you have to just hope and pray that you can either pick up a used copy for cheap if you're gonna go,
or if they patch it. If they patch it, I'll try.
Or wait until they patch it. Yeah.
That would be enough for me to be like, all right, let's see what's up. But
I even considered like, why do you buy a copy and then go the emulation route if you really want to play this game, but it's still broken when you emulate it.
It's not optimized well, so even on better hardware, it's still gonna run badly. Like that's the problem. It's not. In some ways,
it's worse.
It's a broken game.
Bugs the people who come up have been on emulated hardware at incredibly powerful stuff.
Yeah. So we're going to end it there for today. If you guys want to let us know how you're getting on with Pokemon, I'd love to hear from some more of you in the community because I know it's been a mixed bag. Some of you have returned copies. Some of you are saying, despite it all, it's one of your favorite Pokemon games. So if you want to weigh in, definitely let us know. And keep trying to convince me to play the game if you want because, I like hurting myself.
We had like 3 people tell you this week on the YouTube comments and on Discord and stuff to buy this game and play it and that you would really enjoy it.
I know. So I guess we'll see what happens.
I gotta say, if you're a sandwich lover, Ray from the community told me this week that the sandwich mechanic is just incredible.
10 out of 10 sandwich games.
Way to go.
Love that. So if you want to write in, if you want to tune into one of our other shows, if you want to go play Persona with us, wherever you want to get involved, flipscreen.games, that's the website. Write in, become a part of the show, join the community. However you choose to get involved, we appreciate you, and we thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Nintendo Noise. For the crew, I've been Pete, he's been Max, he's been Steve. We'll see you next week.